Welcome to the fourth annual Women's Empowerment Symposium. We have a wonderful 3 days in store for you yet again this year. The Rose Bowl Institute's Women's Empowerment Symposium would not have been made possible if it wasn't for our key support of our donors who have generously donated to ensure our success year after year. Thank you, Mark Schuster and family, Carolyn Miller, the Fitzberg Foundation, Dan and Sarah Rothenberg, the Confidence Foundation, the Larry and Helen Hogue Foundation, Becky Young and Jane Parker, the Christina Mauser Foundation, the Canning Foundation, John and Bonnie DeWitt, and Andy Newman. Thank you all for your incredible support. Specifically, we would like to thank Carolyn Miller as well as Mark Schuster and family as our founding donors to the Rose Bowl Institute. Thank you for supporting our vision to reaching communities throughout the country and around the world. Thank you again, Mark and Carolyn. We would not be where we are today without you both. Just a few things before we get started. I know we are all done using Zoom and being in front of our screens, but I promise you this year is well worth your time once again. Be sure to use our chat function this year, as we will have some of our panelists on to answer your questions live. Mental and physical health are key to everyday life. Just as we have done before, each day we will be bringing you 5 minutes of wellness tips on how to take care of yourself inside and out. Today we'll be doing 5-minute yoga, as we know it is hard to be stuck inside working, taking classes, sitting behind a desk, and staring at a screen. Today we'll get you up and stretching. When sharing on social media today, be sure to use hashtag WES2022, and you may find yourself up on our screen. Also be sure to tag us at Rose Bowl Institute. We love seeing you all. And finally, we ask that you complete a brief survey at the end of each day. By completing this survey, you will then become eligible for one of our $2,500 scholarships. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to get things started with our welcome keynote today, Rose Bowl Institute Advisory Board member and friend of the stadium, Jessica Mendoza. Let's have a wonderful 3 days.
What is up, everyone? Good afternoon and welcome to the Rose Bowl Institute's 4th annual Women's Empowerment Symposium. This is an event that is really close to my heart, mostly because of all the amazing and kick-ass women that are gathered here today. The influence that these women have had on our world is incredible, but most importantly, we get to share, pick each other's brain, and learn from each other. Over the next 3 days, we will cover the 3 themes of the Rose Bowl Institute: sportsmanship, leadership, and citizenship. Today, we kick it off day 1, all about sportsmanship, an attribute that many times gets overlooked, but is so essential. What does it mean to be a good teammate, and how does that carry into our everyday lives? I know that is something that took me a long time to really understand and then honestly identify within my own daily work as an athlete, and now honestly being on television. So we'll get into that and a whole lot more starting here on day 1. I just really want to thank you all for being here in the first place. It's a huge step, and there's so much that we're going to learn over the next 3 days. Now let's get this party started. You've got an awesome host and moderator. She comes over from the NFL. She's a reporter and correspondent for CBS, the great Aditi Kinkambwala.
Thank you for getting us started today, Jessica, and good afternoon and welcome to day 1 of the 4th annual Women's Empowerment Symposium. Over these 3 days, we'll explore together how young women might lead fulfilling lives as athletes, as leaders, and as general citizens. Our goal over these next few days is to inspire you to get in touch with who you are, as well as to empower you as you move through all the various stages of your life. Along the way, we'll be bringing in athletes who've succeeded in their commitment to sports, as well as their commitments to themselves. And we'll talk about how sports values translate to civic values, how you yourself can access your personal leadership qualities. We'll hear from women leaders who have succeeded and have paved the way for future generations. And finally, we will present women in various aspects of sports diplomacy. What are your responsibilities as citizens of this planet? We look forward to your feedback in the chat sessions of each panel and after the event each day. In the end, we can only hope you will continue to learn from these sessions and stay involved with all of us at the Rose Bowl Institute. I'm so excited for the afternoon ahead. And with that said, I'd like to kick things off with our first panel, Women in Sports, discussing Title IX. What better way to kick off the Women's Empowerment Symposium but by celebrating the 50th anniversary of Title IX. Now, no one back then could have possibly imagined the impact today, but I think this is a perfect opportunity to reflect on how far the fight for equal access to opportunity has come and still maybe address where we need to go. Today, we are joined by a wonderful group of women in sports, from those that were part of Title IX and those that have been reaping the benefits of that legislation. It's hard to explain, as many of you may not even know what Title IX is. So before we even get to that, let's just go backwards for a minute and give a little history lesson. Back on June 2nd in 1972, then President Richard Nixon signed the Education Amendments Act. The law's Title IX recognized that gender equity in education was a civil right. What that did was it altered women's sports forever. Part of this shift was accidental. It wasn't a law that was designed to be directed towards sports, but it was certainly a byproduct of that piece of legislation. And so the law was initially written to address gender inequality and sex discrimination in education. At the time, the majority of student bodies were male. In 1970, just 59% of women even graduated from high school, and only 8% of women had a college degree. But again, as I just said, part of the byproduct of giving women equal access to education was making sure that they had equal access to athletic opportunities. And so, as I say that, let's just jump right into this. And we'll start with, of course, one of our most esteemed guests for the entire symposium. And that, of course, is Ann Myers-Drysdale. Ann is a former basketball player. She's also a sportscaster, which is how I met her. She was a standout professional on the high school level, in college, and of course at the Olympics and on the international level. Ann was the first player to be part of the U.S. national team while still in high school, which we're definitely going to ask you about, Ann. And the first woman to be signed to a 4-year athletic scholarship at UCLA. Now, she was the first woman to sign a contract with an NBA team, the Indiana Pacers, in 1979. And Ann is currently a vice president with the Phoenix Mercury. And you're still doing television, right? For the Phoenix Suns?
For the Phoenix Suns and the Mercury, and I'm a vice president with both teams.
With both teams. Okay. And are you harder on either gender?
My expectations are always high for everybody.
Okay, that was the perfect answer. And with that, we'll move on to Alice Merriweather. Alice is a World Cup alpine ski racer. She competes in speed events, in the downhill, in the Super G. She won the gold medal at the World Junior Championships in 2018. She was a member of the 2018 U.S. Olympic team, and she made her first World Cup top 10 in January 2019. And then lastly, we have Brianna Pinto, who plays my favorite sport. She's a soccer player and a midfielder for the North Carolina Courage of the National Women's Soccer League. She's played for the U.S. youth national teams at the 2016 FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup and the 2018 FIFA Under-20 Women's World Cup. And she was named the United States Soccer Federation's Young Female Player of the Year in 2019. At the age of 16, Brianna was the youngest player named to the U.S. women's team squad for the 2017 She Believes Cup. So we have a bunch of overachievers here, I guess. Can we have people who peak a little bit late, Anne? Is that part of the process? Or you have to show your colors early?
Anytime.
Okay, so Anne, let's start with you, obviously. At the time that you picked up a basketball, how many girls in your neighborhood were playing basketball?
Well, I came along fortunately at a time where, not only was I a product of Title IX, but my oldest sister, Patty, oldest of 11, was 8 years older. So I saw women playing softball and volleyball and basketball. They were playing those sports. I read a book in 4th grade on Babe Didrikson Zaharias. So I knew women were in the Olympics. I saw Billie Jean King play tennis against Bobby Riggs. Wilma Rudolph became an idol of mine because of the Olympics. So there were women competing. Just because TV and the media was not giving them exposure doesn't mean that those doors were opened way long before I even opened up doors before somebody else. And so Title IX just came along at the same time that I was coming out of high school. And certainly those doors to be able to go to UCLA on an athletic scholarship. And really how I was recruited, my brother David was playing for Coach John Wooden at UCLA. His roommate was Kenny Washington, who had played for Coach Wooden and won 2 championships. But he was going to be the women's coach. They came home one weekend for a barbecue and said, "How'd you like to go to UCLA and play basketball on a scholarship?" I said, "Okay." And that was it.
Okay, so first of all, my very first book report in elementary school, true story, was on Babe Didrikson Zaharias as well. So we all have, yeah. Brianna, do you know who that is?
I've heard of her, but I wasn't familiar.
Homework. And do you remember thinking, can there be a career for me in sports? Or was that not, even though the idea of participating in sports was alive, did you think that this was just something I would do maybe in high school and then, oh, okay, here, I'll do it in college, and that was that? Or was there a possibility I can turn this into something more?
I never really thought that far ahead. We'd ride our bikes down to the playground, and whether we were playing over the line or football or kick the can at home or basketball and so forth. So, we were just out playing sports. I'm one of 11 children. I have 5 brothers and 5 sisters. So our parents were very supportive of their daughters just as much as their sons going out and playing sports. So sports was just natural in our family. It was great because we're also competitive and be able to go out and do all these events that our parents supported. So to think that I was going to have a career, I had no idea what my career was going to be. I had no idea I was going to college. I had no idea I played 7 sports in high school. I had no idea about USA basketball. All these things just fell into place, and I've been in the right place at the right time. And so to think that I have a career, when we had a pro league, the WBL, which was the first year that we had women's professional basketball in this country. We didn't have soccer then. We didn't. There's softball going on, but it wasn't professional. Now we have pros competing in the Olympics. You had to be an amateur until 1992. And so that's all changed with skiing and soccer and all the other sports for women to compete in the Olympics. So, for me, I just came along at the right time, at the right place, and things fell into place for me, not only through high school with USA basketball, with UCLA, with the Indiana Pacers, with broadcasting. And my dream was always to compete in the Olympics. And because of that book that I read on Babe Didrikson Zaharias, said I wanted to be a high jumper. And track and field and swimming were the only 2 sports really offered to young girls in a competitive situation. So I ran track. I was a high jumper and a pentathlete. And I wanted to go to the Olympics as a track athlete. Well, it didn't work. I went to the Olympics, but it was basketball. But my dream came true.
Well, and that's at the end of the day, all that matters, right?
That's right.
Alice, fast forward us a little bit. So when you're growing up, was it odd to play sports, or was it just expected? Everybody plays sports.
Oh, it was just expected, very much so. I mean, I took my athletic opportunities for granted for a while. My mom made sure that I didn't do that too much. She reminded me that she did not have those kinds of opportunities, and she ran track and played basketball in high school, but she made sure that I understood that this was still relatively new, and the fact that I could play softball, soccer, go skiing, horseback riding, everything that I wanted to was not something that I should take lightly, and that was only new within the last 50 years.
Is there anything that you did that you were the only girl to try or do? Or by the time you participated in all of these sports, did you have peers?
By the time I was doing all of these sports, it was really normal for girls to be doing them.
Okay, so Brianna, the first soccer team that I ever played on was a boys team.
I played
Because
with the boys.
well, now it's very hip and cool to play with the boys. And if you're really good, you play with the boys. But look at me. And I am old enough that when I was 3 years old, there was only one other girl in my entire town that wanted to play soccer. So I had to play with the boys. When you hear that, I had to. I didn't get to, I had to. When you hear that, is that jarring? Does that seem crazy to you?
I definitely do think it seems a little bit crazy because I think if the opportunity were presented to women earlier in life, they would jump with open arms because sport, it has a wonderful ability to unite people of different backgrounds. And I love the way that people in women's sports embrace competition because I think it brings out the best in us. So to your anecdote about playing with the boys, I loved every minute of it. And like, I would still do it if I could, just because like, I think there's some edge of just showing like women are legit in every aspect. So getting to compete at a young age and prove the boys wrong that I deserve to be there. It was so fun.
Okay,
And
so
just
wait,
claiming
tell us more
space.
about that. When was that?
Yeah.
How old were you and why? Why were you playing?
So I had a couple stints. So like one of my first teams was boys. It was like really it was like rec at age 3. And then I got really good as a youth player and I was playing with the girls for a couple of years. But my dad played soccer at Carolina and he knew that Mia Hamm and Christine Lilly, they all grew up playing with the boys and that's how you get to the national team. So naturally for me, I'm the middle of 2 boys. So I have an older brother and a younger brother. And my dad wanted me to be in that environment where the speed of play was a little bit faster and I had to kind of own my physicality and use it to my advantage. And they stuck me in boys soccer from age 10 to 13. And it was a really great step in my career for me.
Do you feel you ever had to apologize for your competitiveness?
I don't think I did because I grew up with brothers. They made me who I am. They made me tough. And I always wanted to hang with them and beat them in things because that's all I knew. So I think that translated nicely into boys soccer.
And do you buy that too? The way that you played with your siblings versus when you were on a team of all women?
Well, as I said, my sister was so competitive and I saw these women playing softball and Joan Joyce and Shirley Topley and just so many other great names in the game of softball and basketball. And my sister played against Nera White, one of the great women to play the game. And so we were all competitive because it was a large family, whether we were playing cards or board games or whatever, we were always competitive. And remember, there'd be so many of us that if one came home with a trophy, there were 3 or 4 others that came home with a trophy. So, how do you embrace that? But, yes, playing against the boys, there was no question that you had to have a certain edge. You had to grow up really quick. If you cried and went home, they said, well, you're not going to play with us if you cry to mom and dad. So you have to really, pick yourself up and tough it out. And so all those are learning experiences. And even going through elementary school and high school and teachers telling you, well, it's not ladylike to play sports. And you're like, why isn't it ladylike? Because our parents are saying it's okay. So you deal with a lot of things that are being said to you and about you, even today. And I have a book out called You Let Some Girl Beat You. And with that title, unfortunately, that there's a lot of fathers that still say that. And what it does, it demeans women. It demeans the female race, saying, well, if you're throwing like a girl, or if you're playing basketball or kicking the ball like a girl, you're not good enough. And so it's fascinating to listen to that term. And we use the words a lot. Like for us, we can use girls a lot against each other, but we're women. We are grown women. And so when you hear men or boys use the word you're girls, but you can't use that terminology for a man that's playing professional sports. If you said boys, that is demeaning. So even saying the word girls, and Billie Jean King talks about this a lot as far as the language we use, the respect factor for each other. And we are women playing the sport, not girls.
I've actually heard that you let a girl beat you. So I had an experience playing in a youth tournament and one of the dads shouted at his son because I scored like 2 or 3 goals that day. And he's like, you're going to let that girl beat you? And I still remember it to this day because it lit a fire underneath me because I wanted to prove that parent wrong.
But
And
did
it
you feel
happens
it was
in
an
business
insult?
too.
Was that an insult, or was that a, yeah, of course a girl beat you, or of course a woman beat you, or why shouldn't a girl beat you?
I think he was more insulted for his son. But for me, I took that as more fuel to my fire. I was like, oh, I love that. I'm beating him. Like I get the edge that day. But I think because it was used with the intent to be dismissive of women's ability to compete in that given sport, like that's where I see the issue. Because you don't want to reinforce ideas like that to your sons, because they grow up to be in sports, working alongside powerful women at organizations like Anna's at, and that kind of language permeates sports culture.
I mean, I think any culture, right? It's all about how we are raising the next generation. But that's a really good point to ask Alice. When you think about the work you put in to make sure that, I have heard Anne, women in your sport, men and women compete in skiing. You put in just as much time as a man does. You take that competition just as seriously. It matters to you just as much. So when there is not as much attention on your races, when there's not as much TV coverage, when there's not as many endorsement opportunities, what does that make you feel? And what do you attribute that to?
I mean, it hurts. It is really frustrating when we don't get equal coverage, and when sponsors pay much higher prize money to men's races and not women's races, because honestly, we have so many stars in my sport right now in women's skiing, and to not give them equal time or coverage is really insulting. We're lucky in that our like international body has given equal prize money to men's and women's races. And so we've actually had higher earners on the female side in women's skiing the last few years over the men's side, but that's only prize money coming from the international body. That doesn't account for sponsors who are then adding to prize money at men's races and not at women's races. And that's just really frustrating that that's still the culture among the sponsors and the supporters of the sport.
Brianna, when you turn on an MLS game versus an NWSL game, are there significant overarching differences in the way the game is played?
I would not say there are any significant differences in the way the game is played. I think there's a beautiful product of athletes on both sides of the game who have just such a wide range of talent. And because it's a global game, I think you can appreciate men's and women's soccer in the same way, because it's the same sport. So many of us like love supporting one another, because a lot of the women's teams across the world are attached to prominent men's teams. But the product on the field is the same, but the investment is not the same. And that's upsetting. So I would echo a lot of the same sentiments that Alice expressed, because if you invest in women's sports, we're seeing the record-breaking numbers that are happening now. And for a team like, or league like the MLS, it took 20, 30 years for them to get to where they are today, but they continued investing in those organizations, even when they were failing, because they knew that those investments would pay off. So I'd love to see like better TV coverage, even the equipment that we're using on the sideline and where it's placed. So like with inclement weather, are we making sure that our game can be effectively seen and watched by fans abroad? Like that's stuff to think about. And it really is in the details when you think about how women's sports are being portrayed.
And when you are in this unbelievably unique position of having a position of power with two teams, a team that is all female and a team that is all male. And there was a time, and please correct me if you don't feel this is valid anymore, but there was a time where we said the women playing basketball played a purer form of basketball than the men playing basketball. And that if you actually were thinking about the game, there was more beauty in what you were seeing the women play, not necessarily because it was below the rim, but just the way the ball was passed and offenses were run and defenses were played. I don't know if that's still the case in your mind, but when you think about selling the two teams to advertisers, to broadcast networks, to fans, what's the biggest obstacle? What's the biggest challenge when it comes to selling the Mercury over the Suns?
Well, first of all, I think Brianna and Alice kind of say it, that they don't get the exposures. Alice said there's so many great stories that the women have as skiers or soccer players or volleyball players and so forth. And Brianna saying, well, the equipment's not there. And wasn't there a controversy too, Brianna, as far as AstroTurf and grass?
Yes.
Yeah.
You guys
Yeah.
were going to play on grass, and you need a continued voice like Megan Rapinoe talking about equal pay. And who are those women that are going to continue to step up? Sue Bird is retiring out of the WNBA, and but I love the fact that we have professional leagues that these women can play into their 40s as long as they want. Certainly, staying healthy is key, but the fact that they have that opportunity, I think, is wonderful. And for me, as far as broadcasting, the women, when I was at UCLA, and I truly believe this, and I've said it over and over again, that if I don't go to UCLA, myself, women's basketball, women's sports does not receive the attention and the notoriety that it did back in 1975. My brother David was a senior at UCLA playing for Coach John Wooden, winning national championships. And if somebody like John Wooden does not say, I enjoy watching the women play because they play a purer game, more fundamentals. So when you hear that from somebody like John Wooden, yes, it captures the attention. But as far as, the media, it still is run by men. Radio stations, social media, a lot of men. You don't hear as many women. Same thing. Who are your producers? Who are your directors? Who are your camera people? Majority are men. And so they're going to think a little bit differently on what they put on. Same thing with coaches. Since Title IX, before Title IX, almost 80% of coaching positions by high school and colleges were held by women. Since Title IX, less than 48% are held by women. So you love the allies that men support women and girls playing sports, but they're taking jobs from women too. Why are women not coaching young girls and young women? And so we've had this sports around for 50 years in the sense under Title IX, that more women have to step up. They talk about role models. Where are the role models? Well, women need to start taking these jobs. And so young girls can see women coaches, women trainers, women physical therapists, women, in the sport as broadcasters or as vice presidents or as presidents or as owners like Renee Montgomery. And, those things are so important to see women stepping up. And so I've been very fortunate to be around the UCLA days and the media take off on my brother and me as a human interest story. And so we were being followed in Los Angeles by the media, covering our games, being on the news. And I'm still frustrated today when I watch a WNBA game, whether it's in Los Angeles, New York, or Chicago, or Minnesota, wherever the game is, Phoenix, that your local news station can't even give you 5 seconds about, hey, the Mercury played tonight and they won 82-80, whatever that thing is. It can't give it even 5 seconds. And I see that throughout the league. Some cities may be better, but I also see that not just in the WNBA, but on all sports. Why aren't they talking about, Brianna and her team playing? Why aren't they talking about the skiing? Why aren't those results being talked about, especially when you have local athletes? And so it's still frustrating. And ESPN, I tap them on the back. But you know what? They give you a 2-hour window for the WNBA game. I don't know what the amount of time they give for soccer, but you don't see the replays that you see on a men's game. You don't see the back and forth of how the announcers can talk about the players, because there's so many great stories. You think about what happened during COVID with Black Lives Matter with Natasha Cloud and Nneka Ogwumike, these unbelievably strong African-American women that have spoken out, and they changed the vote. They changed the vote in Georgia. And so we as women, especially as athletes, we have strength and we have a voice, but we've got to use it.
Okay, so really quickly, why has that shift happened? Why were more women coaching women and young girls, and why are there now more men coaching women and girls?
Money.
Okay.
So you have an athletic director. The majority of athletic directors in this country are white men, and they're going to hire somebody they're more comfortable with. And because there's more money in the women's game, I would say that Alice and Brianna, are you coached by men?
Oh,
Why
yeah,
are women not
pretty
getting
much
those
entirely.
jobs?
Yes, we are. Yes.
have you ever thought about that, Alice? Have you ever thought, what if I had a female coach?
I've been really lucky in the last 6 years on the ski team. I have had a female assistant coach, and we've had a woman as our PT most of that time. But my head coaches have always been men. And I mean, they always attribute it to the physical labor needed for the job, and that it's such a boys' club that no one even want to be a part of it. And, you know, if that's somehow okay, that that, oh, well, the culture exists, so like no one wants to join. And I'm seeing more women get involved at lower levels and development levels. But there's a problem that it's still all the old men in charge who keep hiring their friends, and it's just a revolving door of the same male coaches kind of coming and going, and no women are really working their ways up the ranks.
How do we, as you say that, Alice, that's quite frankly in so many industries. I mean, I can speak to the same. I don't even know. It would definitely not take one hand to think of how many women I have reported to, if any, in my entire chain of command in a 2-decade career. And I'm not an athlete, I'm just on the other side of it. But I'm wondering, Brianna, you play in a sport where Anne was just talking about allies and John Wooden championing the women's games. You play in a sport where the members of the men's national team supported the members of the women's national team fighting for equal pay. So internally, in the soccer world, there was a recognition of who those women are, what those women had achieved, and the work that those women put in. When you think of externally, getting that attention, getting the fans, getting the broadcasters, getting the TV stations and the TV executives to give those women equal billing, what do you think is the challenge there? And what do you think is the key? If you were able to wave a magic wand and make someone see a reality, what would that reality be?
I would say that you need to claim space and then also create space for the next person. And what U.S. Women's National Team did was they identified an issue that you had mentioned is prevalent in so many different industries, and they called out all the reasons like why they're deserving of equal pay and demanded that it be funded. And I think in other industries, I don't know how seriously they take women. You have to have a long track record of success for whatever reason it may be. And I don't think that's necessarily the answer, because you give men the benefit of the doubt all the time. So I would hope that as we see this shift towards more women's empowerment, they see that the investment that you're making by just paying people equally for the same job, it will go on to pay dividends down the line, because you're creating a crop of talent that will be able to fill these roles and flourish in them, both men and women, for generations to come. And I think that goes a long way. So it's really about noticing and taking seriously the issue at hand, creating space for new generations to step in, and then ultimately holding people accountable.
Alice, you've said that your mother has been very vocal in saying, hey, back in my day, it wasn't necessarily like this. So when you hear Title IX, what does that mean to you?
I mean, to me, Title IX means all of the opportunities that I've had that have come so easily to me. It's all due to Title IX. And what I take is something so natural as being able to participate in athletics, and that I don't question. Title IX represents the generations before me that had to fight for that and that have given me that chance.
Brianna, what does it mean to you? What does that trigger in your head when you hear that?
I think about the legacy that they left, and I want to contribute to that and continue to push for more change and more opportunity for women. So I think it's a call to action for me personally, because I feel like I personally had it made for me because of the women that came before me. But if I can do my small part and pick up the baton and continue to push for more change, I think we'll leave the sport better than we found it.
And you hear these young women talking about something that was a part of your coming of age. And is this a living, breathing document to you? Is this a piece of the past? And what do you think when you hear them speak?
I love their comment. It's about opportunities, but it was a law put into place that was for equal opportunity for educators. Women today, 50 years later, make 82 cents to the dollar that a man makes. A woman of color makes 20 cents less than that. So are we equal yet 50 years later? No. And it's a law that's important that I think that young athletes need to understand, that it wasn't just about sports, as you mentioned, Adita, before we started this. And it's a law that's important because if we're going to get rid of Roe v. Wade, and I don't mean to be political, but that was a law for women's choices, not about abortion. It's about a woman's choice, that this law is being taken away by men and using religion as an excuse. And Title IX has been talked about for a lot of years to be taken away. So you're talking about equal opportunity, not just in sports, but education or any other, thing that is involved with academics. And so I think that young women need to understand that this law is important. They've got to fight for it because there's a lot of politicians that want to get rid of it. And also the other thing that I want to follow up is girls and women need to support each other. And you talked about, the people that you have really had to, respond to, usually men. And we've got a lot of men that have supported their daughters, their wives, their sisters, in sports, especially now, which is great. But girls need to support girls. Women need to support women. Don't feel threatened. I mean, if somebody's better than you, then they're better than you. But you know what? You've got to support each other. And I think that is huge, whether it's through soccer and skiing or volleyball or basketball or whatever your sport is, track and field. And there's so many opportunities for young girls, not just to compete in sports, but other things. But, Title IX is a law that we need to keep around for a long, long time, and it should not go away.
It's funny you say that because I'm on a show called We Need to Talk on CBS, and it's a panel of wonderful women, and we talk about the world and sports issues. And to celebrate Title IX, I was asked, what do you hope people say about Title IX in 50 years? And Anne, I said, I hope it's obsolete. I hope it's irrelevant. I hope that it's just a way of life and not something that we need to legislate. But for us to get there, as I say that, for us to get there, Brianna, what needs to change? What more needs to be done beyond the things that we've talked about? We've talked about having equal access to the media. We've talked about equal pay. What in our nature, what in our way of thinking as a collective society needs to change?
I would say recruiting. Recruiting goes a long way because if you extend an opportunity for somebody to be introduced to a field that they otherwise wouldn't have had the opportunity to have, it opens the door for a lot of different people of various different backgrounds. So not only would I love to see more women coaches, but I'd also love to see diversity within that, more people of color, because I've never had a Black or brown coach that's a woman in my lifetime. And I think it would go a long way for representation as a whole, because not only are you inspiring women, but you're inspiring those young Black and brown girls that don't have a role model to look to. And I think representation is a huge, huge aspect of our growth in terms of opportunity. And if we can utilize recruiting to create workshops where people can get involved in the sport and understand all the legislation that goes on behind the scenes to make the sport happen, you are creating new avenues of success for a lot of different people.
Alice, how are you a different person for having played sports?
I mean, I think that participating in sports has made me who I am today. It's given me the platform like this where I can talk about this and hopefully inspire the next generation of not just female athletes, but of young women in general. And it's made me feel very proud of who I am. And I don't know that I would be able to have that if I didn't have sports in my background and if I didn't have the joy that built me through competition.
And give us 3 traits of yours that are a direct result of having competed in sports.
Confidence, competitive greatness, leadership.
Brianna?
I'd say the competitive fire, the joy for life, and the ability to meet people and connect with them on an intimate level.
Okay, Alice, you give us 3. What are 3 traits you don't necessarily have if you hadn't competed?
I think passion. Sport has taught me to fully invest myself. Growth and the desire to always be the better version of myself on and off the slopes. And I think also connection. I've met so many people through sport, not just skiers. And so many of them have had a huge impact on who I am.
Okay, ladies, it's your turn. Does anybody have a question for any of you? Anne, you have a question for Brianna. Alice, you have a question for Anne?
Yeah,
I have a
Brianna,
question for Anne.
who was your role model growing up?
My role model, I have 2 of them. Serena Williams, just the way she took the tennis world by storm, and recently watching her career come to a close. It was powerful because she was unapologetically herself every step of the way, and I think that was inspiring to me as a Black woman in professional sport. And then also Crystal Dunn. I wanted to attend the University of North Carolina, and she was someone that I could attend the matches and look after and want to be like. And now she's on the U.S. women's national team, and I play against her in the NWSL. And just the things that she stands for, and just her abilities on the field made me want to emulate a lot of the qualities that she has.
Brianna, you said you had one for Anne too.
I do. What are you most excited about in today's generation of women's sports?
The enthusiasm and the strength. I mean, I was the #1 draft pick in the WBL, which was the very first league professional basketball wise in this country. And, we had the opportunity to play, and it's just been interesting to see the growth of women's sports that people thought, well, you couldn't play past the age of 21 or 22. And now the WNBA has shown, as soccer and the other sports, that you can have children, you can be a mother and a wife and still compete at a high level. And to see where the WBL has grown and all those women that made a difference to where the WNBA is now today. And but I see such confidence in the young athletes, and they are unapologetic is the word that's been used today, of who they are and what they are doing. And nobody's making them feel that they are inadequate. And sports does that to you, to give you that confidence. And also, when you talk to athletes, when they retire, they say, well, what do you miss most? And it's usually to the men that they ask this question. And they said, it's the locker room. And now the women have this opportunity to form these great sisterhood relationships that they'll have for the rest of their life. And without those sports, we never really had that. And that's why it's so important to support each other. But I see the growth and the leadership of these young women, that they can do anything they want. Don't look back in your life and say, I wish I could have, would have, should have. Don't look back. And when you have an opportunity, whether it's a race or a competition or a position that you can step up into a different role on your team or whatever, say, I'm going to do it. And don't look back and say, I wish I could have, I should have done that. And it just, because you have the opportunity, you're going to learn. You don't fail at something. You'll learn from what didn't go right for you. And, and that's what's so great about sports. We fail all the time. We lose all the time. We make mistakes all the time, no matter what the sport is. And, but we always have the opportunity to get back up and do it again. And that's what makes you such great women and great leaders, because 1, your passion for the game, and 2, you're not going to let somebody tell you can't do something.
And that is tremendous as you say it, but I sort of feel compelled to ask you. You had asked Brianna who she looks up to right now. Who's a woman, or who are some women that you look to today that you hope young women, whether they play sports or not, are wanting to emulate?
Well, that's such a great question. And certainly I'm involved with basketball so much. And I, unfortunately, because of the media not exposing more women's sports, you don't get to see these unbelievable stories of these women. And so I will have to fall back on the WNBA. And our story right now is still Brittany Griner, trying to get Brittany Griner, who's been a wonderful voice for our game. Not only is she a Black woman, she's a gay woman, she's got tattoos and so forth, and what's happening to her in Russia. And that has been a huge story throughout sports, and have that support. And so not to lose sight of somebody that is being held against will, no question, against her will, and has been charged not correctly. But in saying that, you know, now with Sue Bird gone, and you still look at somebody like Megan Rapinoe and Serena, who are those next women that are going to speak up? And you've got to win. Unfortunately, you've got to win. You've got to be a voice and be out there, but certainly social media can do that. And I know Nneka Ogwumike has been huge, but having Candace Parker, Nneka Ogwumike, or Shanae Ogwumike, and Renee Montgomery on national TV with TNT and ESPN makes a difference, because that has helped recognize the WNBA with those 3 WNBA players still playing and having a voice. And so there will be more and more women that are going to get into broadcasting, like yourself, that will have a strong voice and not back down of issues, and have an overall idea of what's going on in the world with sports, not just with women's sports or football or baseball or what the men's sports, but overall. And I think that that's important, and also getting more women that are producers, directors. And as I said, social media, and Brianna brought it up as far as recruiting wise, and the NIL has changed college sports completely. And some of these college athletes are making more money than if they turn pro. So they're better off staying in college because of the money they're making.
And maybe the women at least won't have to go to Russia. That's part of the
That's
story,
right.
isn't it? That the WNBA doesn't pay enough, that these women have to go overseas.
And I would
play
love
their
to see the
off-season.
league 7 to 8 months, so they don't have to go overseas and play. Let them have their own season that's not 4 months, but that's going to be a 7 to 8 month season.
Right. Alice, how about you? When you look around the landscape of women's sports right now, your peers, is there someone, I hate to use such a colloquial term, but is there someone you'd fangirl over? Is there someone that you hope to meet, or is there someone you have met that you just say, I like the way she's doing it?
I mean, outside of skiing, I'm such a fangirl of the whole US women's national team. We actually got to go and see a game. They came to Salt Lake City for a couple of friendlies, and I'm just so impressed with the way that the whole team came together as a unit. They fought for equal pay. They've been such advocates for women's sports in general. And so getting to see them actually on the field playing their sport, not just through a TV, was really amazing. And then in the world of skiing, I mean, I have always been such a fan of Lindsey Vonn, and I know she's retired, but I was lucky enough to overlap with her for a few seasons, and just the way that she took me under her wing and was unapologetically herself. She was loud, she was outspoken, she wanted to race against the men, and unfortunately wasn't allowed to, but she was so confident in her abilities. It was really inspiring to watch. And so she's still a role model of mine.
Ladies, this is tremendous in every way. Does anyone have any final thoughts before we sign off? Any thoughts on Title IX, on where we are growing, how we are growing, on a big thing you hope to see when we gather next year?
My comment is just thank you all for having this discussion, because I think discussions like these are so necessary, and it opens the eyes of people who may not be aware of the issues that we face in women's sports. And I think the more we can elevate each other and support one another in our individual journeys, the greater success we're all going to have collectively. So just thank you for moderating this and for drawing more attention to our sports.
I'd like to say thank you too. And just to carry on from that, I don't care whether it's an AAU coach or a high school coach or a college coach, parents and athletes and the coaches need to understand what Title IX is. And I think that if they discuss it with their young girls and their young boys, because, you know, before Title IX, if you look at the sports that were being competed with, in football and basketball were the two sports making money. And that was distributed to boys baseball, track and field, tennis, golf, water polo, swimming, whatever. And those sports didn't make money for the men. So it was distributed. So now the pie is bigger and you have to include the women. That's why the men are not happy, because they've got to share it with the women. And so I think it's important that coaches really understand and really express and make their students and the parents understand what Title IX is really for.
It's very true, which Alice, your mom, has very clearly done all those years that you've been competing. So make sure you call her and tell her thank you.
Oh, yes, I will. And also thank you to you three for being such inspirational and powerful voices. It's really cool for me to get to share this platform with you three. And I'm really excited about the future of women's sports, the next 50 years, hopefully, like you said, of hopefully Title IX falling into obscurity.
And wishing you all the best in your careers.
Same.
Thank
Well,
you.
and you're not done. So ladies, thank you again so much for your time. Everybody, we really appreciate this. Take a quick break and we will be back with our next panel. It really is amazing what a 5-minute break can do. So each day we're going to provide you with 5-minute wellness tips of exercises and meditation that you can really do from anywhere. And just because you're working behind a desk like I am right now, or behind a screen, or going to classes, it doesn't mean you can't take care of yourself. It only takes 5 minutes to reset. So today, yoga instructor Amanda Lee is going to get us going. We're going to have you stand up, push aside anything that's in your way, and join us for just 5 quick minutes of yoga. Amanda, they are all yours.
Thanks, Aditi. Welcome to your 5 minutes of Zen. So we have 5 minutes to get moving and get a little namaste on. My name is Amanda. Let's get started. So if you don't have a yoga mat, it's all good. Wherever you are, come to stand. If you do have a yoga mat, stand at the top of your mat. Take your left hand to your heart, right hand to your belly, and then take just this moment to close your eyes. Feel your feet pressing down firm into the floor, into the mat, into the ground. Take a big breath in through your nose. Exhale, sigh it out the mouth. 2 more like that. Inhale deeply. Exhale, let it go. 1 more time, breathing in. And this time, loud sigh. Blink the eyes open, sweep the arms up, inhaling. Exhale, dive it in, forward fold, take it on down. Inhale, lengthen the chest, hands up the shins, reach the heart forward. Exhale to fold. Take your feet a little wider than your hips distance. Grab opposite elbows and just rock it out. Think about the crown of your head reaching down towards the earth. And then gently switch the opposite arm in front. Shake out your head, a little yes, a little no. Notice how much tension is in your neck, in your back body. I recently had cupping yesterday, so I'm feeling some release. So you might see my cupping marks. Let your hands slide up your shins, breathing in, stretch the heart forward. Breathing out, forward fold, deep bend in the knees, ragdoll, roll it up to stand vertebrae by vertebrae. Head is the last thing to come up, and once it comes up, roll the shoulders back. And then take your hands to your shoulders, little shoulder shrug. Awesome, and then take a few big arm circles. Big arm circles. Awesome. Take the feet wide apart. Inhale to reach up. Exhale, dive it in, forward fold. Inhale, hands up the shins, lift the chest, find space in your side body. Exhale to fold. Right foot stays, left foot steps back. Runner's lunge with the hands to the inside of the right foot. Take a quick look at your right knee. See the right knee stacked in line over the heel, and then gently press the hands down. Step back, top of a push-up plank pose. Don't worry, I'm not making you stay here. Just 1 breath in. 1 breath out, leads the hips back and up, downward facing dog. Hands and feet stay in the same spot. And then just start to bend and straighten the leg. Pedal out your dog, walk your dog. Sorry if you can hear my cracking in my ankles. Nice little pops. Awesome. And then right from here, look forward, start to crawl your feet forward towards the top of the mat. Hands slide up your shins, lengthen the chest, sternum reaches towards the front. Exhale to fold. Bend in the knees, ragdoll, roll it up again. Right away, head's the last thing. Shrug the shoulders back. Arm circles. Adding on just a little before we go to the other side. Big, big, big arm circles. Once the arms are up overhead, pause. Right hand grabs the left wrist and then take a little lean to the side. Inhale pulls you back to center. Take it up and over to the other side. If you went the opposite way first, it's all good. Inhale pulls you back to center. Exhale, forward fold, dive on in. Left foot stays this time. Inhale, lengthen the chest. Step your right foot back. Pause, hands to the inside of the left foot. Lengthen your chest, reach the heart forward. Press your hands down, step back, downward facing dog. Beautiful. Inhale takes you forward, plank pose, top of a push-up, just for breath, knees lower down, big toes touch, take your knees wider, child's pose. Forehead comes down. If that's not comfortable where you are, slide your hands underneath your forehead, make a little pillow. If that's not okay on your knees, keep your booty in line over your knees. Think about melting your heart to the floor, or same thing, bring the floor up, make 2 fists under your forehead. Take another breath here. Notice how you're feeling, check in. And then press up, right hand, left hand, all fours. Inhale, lengthen your sternum forward. Exhale, press the floor away, dome through the upper back. Inhale, reach the sternum forward, lengthen the chest. Exhale, dome, lift from the back of your heart. One more time, inhale, reach the heart. Exhale, press it away. Inhale, lengthen your heart, crawl the hands forward, tuck the toes, lift the hips back and up, downward facing dog. Crawl your feet back to meet your hands. Take your hands behind your head like you're doing a crunch, sit up. Soften in your knees, think about the weight in the balls of your feet, gently traction your neck. Think about your belly moving towards your thighs. And then gently release your hands down. Roll it up to stand one last time. Once you're up to stand, shrug the shoulders back. One last time. Those little elbow circles. Good. And then take a few arm circles. Reach the arms up. Pull the prayer down to your heart. Interlace your fingers. Flip the palms up to the sky. Lean up and over one direction, whichever one you want to go to first. Inhale pulls you back. Exhale up and over to the other side. Feel that nice big side bend. Inhale pulls you back. Exhale, hands to prayer. Pause for a second, bow your head. And before we part each other, take just a moment of gratitude. Think of something that you are grateful for right here, right now, in this moment. In yoga, we generally start and end our practice, or at least end our practice saying one word to each other, just acknowledging we're all people, we're all human beings. The divine light and love in me honors that within each of you. Namaste. Enjoy the rest of the day. Back to you, Aditi.
Thank you so much, Amanda. It always feels so great to get up and stretch. And let's just keep things moving along. The next group of women that we have here are all what we can call game changers. They have implemented change in so many ways. And let's be honest, as much as we think that we're changing the game continuously needs to change. So all 4 of these women are breaking barriers across a variety of different spaces in the sports world. With them, we will discuss what it takes to be a game changer, and always knowing that if you can dream it, you can be it. So let's go from there. Women are continuing to break barriers in all aspects of sports, and a growing number of individuals in sports are starting to see that the disparities in sports are indeed a social problem. So what we're going to try to do right here is address how across industries and generations, visionary leaders and athletes build teams, harness the power of their communities to educate and inspire the next generation of leaders, female and male. Today, we will educate you on how to leverage the power of sports to truly unite people everywhere, utilizing sportsmanship values, as our theme today is, in fact, of course, sportsmanship. Okay, so again, thank you for joining all of us, and let's get right to it. Let's introduce some of these wonderful and inspiring women. We'll start with Coach Katelyn Smith. Wave hi.
Hi, everybody.
There she is. Okay, Coach Smith is an American football coach who most recently was the special teams quality control coach for the Buffalo Bills, the favorite team of my 7-year-old son. She is the first full-time female coach in NFL history. And according to my friend Callie Brownson, who is currently a full-time coach with the Cleveland Browns, Coach Smith is legit. And she is the original OG. So that's from Callie, Coach Smith. Coach Smith was the only woman to ever hold a full-time coaching position in the NFL until 2017. And then we've got Reagan, otherwise known as Mrs. Chim Chim. We are going to get to that Mrs. Chim Chim, right? And where that came from?
Probably. Yeah, we'll get to it.
All right. Well, Reagan is a positive force for chill vibes, professional limit testing, and always looking very cute while doing so. Why do we need to apologize for that, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so when she streams, Reagan strives to create a safe and inclusive environment for any and everyone. And you're also a Riot partner. Mrs. Chim Chim, Reagan, is a Riot partner. And then let's come down to Monet Davis. She is a former Little League baseball pitcher, and she's currently a Hampton University softball player. Ms. Davis grew up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She was one of 2 girls who played in the 2014 Little League World Series. She's the first girl to earn a win and throw a shutout. She was the 18th girl overall to play, the 6th to get a hit, and Monet Davis was the first Little League baseball player to appear on the cover of Sports Illustrated as a Little League player. I think this is so crazy because Monet was just telling my son that when I started playing soccer, girls didn't play. So I was the only girl on my 4-year-old boys soccer team. All right, and we have Coach Jennifer King. She is also an American football coach who is the assistant running backs coach for the Washington Commanders. Jennifer was the first African-American woman to become a full-time coach in the NFL following her promotion in 2021. She has also coached women's college basketball. And Jennifer, I had a very interesting conversation about you with Coach Ron Rivera at the Cincinnati Pro Day this past March. He said that you don't know your power. He said the players listen to you more than you realize.
That's good to know. I'll remember that.
Okay, but on that note, let's start right there. So when you were thinking about getting into coaching, how aware of Katelyn Smith were you? Did you know that she was doing what she was doing?
Oh yeah, I was very aware. This is actually the first time actually seeing her and being in the same space. It's kind of exciting. But yeah, no, I was very aware of her and the things that she was doing.
And why did that matter? Like, did that mean anything to you to see a woman coaching in the NFL?
It's representation. I mean, she was the first kind of the OG of the whole group. And, to see that representation is so important. It's something that we talk about now all the time. It's just continuing that representation because it matters. It's important.
Okay, so Katelyn, that's really funny that she says that because I told you that's what Callie Brownson called you, as the OG. When you were getting in, did you even think about that? That no woman has ever done this? That I'm setting a standard?
No, absolutely not. Having a conversation with Coach Ryan, who was the head coach at the time, that didn't come up in our discussion at all. And it really wasn't until after it kind of leaked. The Bills didn't even make an announcement or anything. It got leaked. And then it became a big deal. And then we kind of stepped back and went, oh, whoa, maybe this is something we, kind of need to address. It was never anything we wanted to be front and center, but it was also, became apparent that it wasn't something we could not address and not, be something that was meaningful. So it was interesting at the time to strike that balance of not being the focus, but also not completely ignoring it.
I think it's fascinating you say that, right? Because I imagine that all 5 of us would say we just want to do our jobs, and that it's not necessarily about our gender. It's about doing the job and doing the job in the right way, whether it's striking out the opposing batter, whether it's creating a space in esports, whatever it is. Our gender should almost be secondary, but it's not. So in what ways in your life did it become real? In what ways were you aware of it?
Just the attention I was getting. I mean, I started as a quality control coach, which is the lowest, the most entry level coaching position on most teams. And, I think I even said at the time, I don't know that anybody probably could even name most of the quality control coaches on other teams. And here I was having to do press conferences and being requested to do things like that, which also is as a coach, especially a lower level coach, you don't have a lot of extra time. So, kind of doubled the hustle of trying to get my job done, trying to make sure I was doing the best job I could, but also just that added attention, that added, those other outside elements that were taking place.
Do you, Monet, sort of similarly, we just talked about this, you're the first Little League player that's ever been on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Do you ever feel there was resentment from your peers that you were getting attention for being a girl in a space that's traditionally a boy space, or female in a space that's a male space?
No, I played with that same group of guys since I was 7. So like they've always been supportive, and they knew what I was capable of. So going out there and throwing that shutout, they like, it was just normal for them to see me do that because I've done it my entire life. But they've always just been super happy for me. Make sure that they had my back. I think they were more protective than being resentful towards me. So all those guys, they're just brothers to me, and they just had my back, and they were happy that, all the hard work that they see me, put in, day out, that it was all paying off.
I love that you say that, because I often say this as a female journalist, that I feel the athletes themselves find it less jarring that you're a woman than perhaps the outside world. And I don't know if you agree, disagree, but off of that, let's just ask why. Reagan, why don't you start? Why? Why did you want to enter a space that wasn't traditionally female?
I wanted to enter this space because growing up, like, I didn't see anybody that resembled me in these spaces. So I kind of wanted to lead the pack in a sense of like, the little boys and little girls can look up and be like, oh, like I can do that too. Like, it's possible. So being able to kind of represent and make that step towards the right direction, I feel like it's really important.
Okay, so Catherine, for you, it's a little bit different. You said you never even thought about the fact that a woman wasn't coaching. So why did you want to coach? Why did you want to get into the NFL?
I had been working in the NFL for 12 seasons prior to that, and in other capacities, and then with the coaching staff for 2 years prior to that. And I think, to your point, there's a lot of women that work in the NFL that have other roles within teams. So although it is obviously, male dominated, and not specifically on a coaching staff, there's other women around. So the players are used to seeing women in other roles. So it wasn't as jarring internally as perhaps externally.
What about you, Jennifer? You were coaching basketball. Why do you want to start coaching running backs?
Football has always been big to me. So I grew up around football. It was big where I'm from and was always kind of my favorite sport. I played at that time for many years, women's tackle football leagues. And I don't know, I think it was just time to make that leap. But I saw people doing it. So I felt the confidence that I could do it. And, I never really thought about, any of the, first or anything like that when I did it. I just really wanted to coach football. I love coaching. And I just put them all together, and kind of here we are.
Okay, let's talk about this. Sports, the value of sports. Whoever wants to go first, why do you think it is important that sports extend to women? What do young girls get out of participating in sports?
I guess I can start, but just the confidence that it builds. When you look at all of these Fortune 500 companies and just leadership roles in so many industries, those women in those roles have athletic backgrounds of at least playing sports. And there's so many stats out there about it. But even, I was looking at a flag football stat about girls starting to play flag football. And I mean, the stats are crazy as far as how it builds confidence, discipline, all the things it takes to be great athletes, carries over into the real world to be great leaders and great at any other position you have.
What about the competitiveness? Reagan, you take this one. Are women just as competitive as men? And is it a knock on women to be competitive? And why? How do we erase that if it's the case?
I definitely believe that women are probably just as competitive as men, especially in gaming. I don't want to say that women always feel like they have something to prove, but they always want to win. You always want to be the victor, right? And in the games that I play online, you don't always get to see who's on the other side. So you don't know if you're playing against a woman or a man. So it's really just, I want to win. So that's what we focus on, just getting to the other side.
Do you think, Monet or Catherine, whoever feels more comfortable, do you think that we still battle sort of this idea that it's a little unseemly for a woman to be ridiculously competitive, for a woman to care about winning as much as, let's say, Serena Williams cares about winning?
It shouldn't.
Of course. Are we past that? Are we past that, do you think?
I don't think we're past it. I think we are making progress, but I do think we still have a long way to go.
What do you think, Monet?
I agree. I mean, just like going back to your original question, why, girls and women being in sports, it honestly, it just helps in the long run. Women are born leaders, and, just being in a team environment, it kind of, helps that leadership grow, and, being able to work with the team, that also, is really big once you get into the real world. And just being around sports, it's given me plenty of opportunities that I would never dream of. And, just gains that extra family, really. But leadership role and just like working with the team is, huge for me. And I know it's huge for other people.
Jennifer, as you listen to her say that, and you and I both know that there are so many NFL players that have been raised by really, really strong mothers and are used to the idea of strong women. What do you think is one of the sort of stereotypes or perceptions externally that really drives you nuts? Like, if you could tell someone, look, you may think this, but it's just not true, what would that be?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's the obvious question you get all the time is like, do they listen to you type of thing. And that's so ridiculous. If you're in the building, I guess outside looking in, people are curious to know. But, as we already talked about, it's not really a thing. Like, I'm just another coach. I think even when we get new players in, it's not even a thing. They just want to be better, and they just want to stay on the roster. It's the NFL. Can she help me be better? Can she help me be prepared for Sundays? That's all that matters. So, to get that question quite a bit, it's kind of funny now. I laugh at it. But it's like, seriously, like, what do you mean? They don't have a choice.
But even then, as we say that, I just sort of jokingly told you that Coach Rivera was saying you're more powerful than you realize. Do you think that you have changed as a coach? Have you become more assertive? Have you become more confident in the way that you talk to players in the years that you've been there?
Sure. I think experience is huge. And, coming in from the basketball side, as a basketball coach, I got on my kids a lot, my girls a lot, because they needed it, but coming into the NFL where it's a little different, you don't have to yell and scream as much. So I think the guy that I coach with, he does that, but I kind of balance us out sometimes by not doing that. So I think I just kind of found my role in the room that I'm in. I think that's so important to have balance. So that's what I bring to the table. I don't think both of us need to be jumping around all the time. We need someone to balance us out.
Yin and yang, right? Good cop, bad cop. So is Coach King is the easy one? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, if I need to, I can do it because it's definitely in my background, but it's not really something that I feel like I need to do right now in my current role.
Catherine, what about you? What's one stereotype that you faced throughout your entire career that you wish you could just lay lie to? If you could just say, stop talking about this, this is the reality.
Exactly what Coach King just said. Just the fact that players want to be better. So they really don't care if you're male, female, black, white, blue, purple, green, standing on your head. If you know your stuff and they think if they come to you and ask you a question, you're going to have an answer that's going to help them, then that's the most important thing.
Okay, let's switch it a little bit. Reagan, if you were to change something, if you wish that there was something, not just a stereotype, not just a perception, but something that actionably you wish could be different, is there something you can speak to?
Well, personally, in the game that I play called League of Legends, there is a stereotype. People like to say that all girls only like to play the cute, frilly champions. We call them e-girl supports, which means like you're in the support position. You don't play like a hard carry damage champion. I'd love to change that stereotype. And not only like, I don't touch support, maybe not for that reason, but I like to play the hard carry damage champions. But I would also like to give the support category a like hard, like maybe not frilly champion, but like a male support champion that can still heal and shield, but like, kind of do the opposite, have a male representation for that category. Do you see what I'm saying?
Totally. Isn't that like the story of everything? The princess has to be saved by the prince. Why can't the princess save herself?
Right.
Right? Why can't she just be a warrior girl on her own? So I definitely get that. Monet, what do you think? As more and more young girls are playing sports, they're playing with each other as opposed to with boys. Is that better? Is that worse? Do you feel like there was something in your experience of playing on a team of boys that could never be replicated by, for instance, my daughter, who will only play with girls?
Well, for me growing up, I feel like the difference between playing with boys and girls, definitely was just probably the trash talk, and it just helps you like mentally as you get older. I feel like boys love to just talk trash no matter what the sport is, no matter what you're doing. They're always trying to get in your head and trying to prove some type of point, which I don't get why, but I definitely grew as a player, just, being mentally tough and going into those spots, in a league you play against a team multiple times. So obviously you're going to see those players, over and over again. So, the first time I play the team, I hear them talking and like trying to get in my head, but like, I never really focused on that. So I feel like when you're a girl and you play in that situation, you grow mentally, but also playing with girls and against girls, you grow, more fundamentally. I feel like girls, specifically in basketball, for me, girls were more fundamentally sound. And, they did all the right things and actually made you think. And boys are just kind of relying off their athletic ability. So I feel like just being able to play with both, it, really helps a person on the field and also off the field as well.
Coach King, you buy that? Is that true? Are the female basketball players more fundamentally sound?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, while they're working on fundamentals, the guys are everybody trying to dunk and do stuff they see on TV.
Is it very different coaching women than it is coaching men?
Sure. I mean, they're different. But I mean, it's even a more, I think the difference is more with me just because I was coaching collegiate women versus professional men. So I think even coaching professional women would be different. It's just, it's a different demographic. These guys it's their livelihood. So it's much different than just coaching college kids.
What's the best part of your job, Jennifer? If you were to really sit here and say, this is why I love what I do, what is it?
For me, it's just the relationships. I mean, I think that helps you be a better coach, is building those relationships with your players, to have the trust and to have conversations not about football, just about life. We talk about all the time that this football thing is just such a small part of their lives. It's 5 years, 6 years, whatever it may be. So we try to prepare them for after that and, just to make sure they're good mentally, physically, emotionally, everything. You know, we want to be a total coach. So I think those relationships are the best part of this job.
Yeah, but 5 or 6 years unless you're Tom Brady, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You just play forever. What? I'm sorry, I'm doing this again, Reagan, but I'm going to flip it for you. What's the worst part of what you do?
Oh.
I mean, we all have
worst
stuff,
part.
right? Everybody's got stuff. So
The worst part, I would say, it's kind of like bittersweet. So the worst part is definitely like going through your comments or having people come into your stream and the things that people type, because again, you're on that computer, they can't see you, so they think they are untouchable. So the things that people type are so vile. Like, I don't even know if I can say some of the things that have been typed to me, but it stings a little bit. But then like after 30 seconds, you know, I'm like, dang, they really just said that. But after that, it's like, okay, and now I'm about to go 5 times harder, and you're going to see me on that many more websites, that many more like interviews, and then you're going to be upset. So I'm going to multiply, and that's just how it is. So at first it hurts, but I'm just going to come harder every single time. Every single time.
you do fight back. You do fight back against the trolls.
Not verbally, because I'm not about to waste my time. My time's a little bit too valuable for that. I am going to just work harder and make sure I am seen. You hate that I'm on your screen right now. Well, baby, I'm about to be everywhere. I'm going to be on your TV. I'm going to be in a commercial. I'm going to be everywhere. So just remember to face, okay? That's all you got to do.
Okay, Catherine, you're taking a little bit of a break right now, right?
Yes.
Are you willing to tell us a little bit why it was important to
Yes,
sit back for a minute?
Yeah, I'm out of football, as they say, raising my daughter. So I'm coach of the household, I guess, now, instead of a team. So it's, it's different, but I think kind of going back to your point about you learn a lot of things playing sports and coaching sports and being around it, and may not be as different maybe as it might seem at first.
How old is your daughter?
She's almost a year and a half.
So we don't know yet if she's into sports or not. Or are you already throwing her balls?
Well, oh yeah. I'm not sure that she has much choice. I'm pretty sure the only television that she has watched has been live sporting events, games, and the Olympics, and so we're varying her sports exposure, but pretty much it's sports. I mean, that's not to say if she does not want to play sports, I will not force her to. But I think it's going to be a little difficult to grow up in this house and not be around sports and not be involved in sports in some way, shape, or form.
Is there? Okay, so first, I will send you a photo of me holding my daughter in the NICU watching the Steelers and the Ravens. So never too early to watch football.
My daughter came home. She came home from the hospital in a football outfit.
Yeah. So it's still in you. Okay, so tell us something that Monet said something great earlier. She said that women are natural born leaders, which really, like, you sit here and you think about everything that a woman has to manage. Duh. It's almost absurd that there aren't more women sitting around a board table in general. But what about the opposite? What is something from your NFL career or something from your coaching career that you think informs your parenting?
The ability to multitask. That's a big one that comes up a lot in the coaching world and in the NFL. Like I said, just so multitasking, time management, just that idea of having, lots of balls in the air and not letting any of them drop. But also being able to prioritize, you kind of, I think in coaching and in sports, you learn how to prioritize things. And I feel like that comes through as well as a parent. So, and then, like you said, those leadership abilities and that confidence and just kind of, you see so much in sport, and sort of having that in the back of my mind as far as the kind of person that you want to raise. So it's I think a lot of it goes into it. I think there are a lot of similarities and useful things that can go across both realms.
It's True, very true. Okay, Monet, let me ask you this. When you think of sportsmanship, what is sportsmanship? What do you wish was different in the world of sports in terms of, no, I'm not going to ask you 500 questions. Let's just go back to that one. What is sportsmanship?
I think sportsmanship is just honestly just being a good person. Everyone wants to win, but it's how you win and just winning in the right way. So, my coach always told me, after we win a game, act like you've been here before. So not, going all crazy. I get like a championship if you're, professional, it's a little different, but like when you're younger, like just, how you carry yourself on the field, pay respect to the game. So our coach always had us wear high socks because we were named after the Negro League, the Kansas City Monarchs. So, they wore high socks. So just, paying respect to, the game. But really just being a good person. I feel like that's like huge for me, is just being a good person and treating the game the right way, because the game is always going to treat you the right way if you, give your respect where respect's due.
How, Jennifer, when you listen to that and when you think about changing the game, the way that Coach Smith changed the game, the way that Coach Lo Locust changes the game, the way that Kelly Brownson changes the game, how does that all play into sportsmanship? Why is that part of sportsmanship, changing the game and breaking barriers?
As Monet talked about, I think it's respect for the game. We love the sport that we're in. So a lot of that sportsmanship comes from just respecting it and respecting your opponents.
Reagan, can you give us anything else in addition to that?
In terms of sportsmanship or changing sportsmanship?
Both.
So sportsmanship in terms of like online gaming, I think is still kind of the same. You want to make sure that you're respectful. Still the classic like, oh, good luck, have fun, or GG at the end, good game. Those are all like the best ways to show your sportsmanship, or like, oh, you did a really good job. Even if they're on the enemy team, like noting that they played well, like, wow, you made this game hard. Good job. Like that's the best part of League, honestly. So,
which is all kind of this idea that let's all be inclusive. We're all in it together, right? Like,
right.
Even if you're the enemy, we're playing together. If you're male, if you're female, we're all in it.
Exactly.
Okay, so Catherine, you talked about your daughter who's a year and a half, and I think about this a lot myself. My daughter just turned 3. What would you tell your daughter now, or what would you tell your own younger self that you wish you knew?
I think I would just tell my younger self to stick with it. There's a lot of times when you're growing up or when you're starting your career that you don't know how it's going to play out. So you don't see how these little moments are going to add up, and how things that you don't know at the time are going to end up being important, opening important doors. So I think I tell this to young people now when I talk to them, just to take every experience and make the best of each experience, because you don't know what that's going to turn into. You don't know who that's going to allow you to meet, what relationship that's going to allow you to build, what piece of knowledge you're going to get from an experience that you can't see 5 steps ahead to know where it's going to be beneficial. So I think, I often say persistence is important, but so is patience. You have to be persistent, but also be patient in that something might seem like it should have a better result right away, and you just don't know where that might be useful in the future.
Reagan, what about you? What's something you wish you knew then that you know now?
I think one of the biggest things is I was really scared to get started. I was always blinded by like, oh, what are people going to think of me? Oh, what are people going to say? But once I realized like, oh, I want to do this for me, like this is what I truly want, it became so much easier. So I would definitely tell myself, like, don't be afraid. If something goes wrong, just because one door has closed doesn't mean that another one hasn't opened that you can't see. Kind of like what Miss Smith was just saying. So I would definitely say, like, don't be scared, lean into it. If that's what you really want, go get it. What's stopping you?
That's great. Okay, Jennifer, if you could give your younger self a piece of advice, or change something about your younger self, what would it be?
Yeah, I don't think I would change anything, but I think it would just be that mindset to it's okay to be the representation that you didn't have. To just step out and do it, without actually seeing someone that looks like you. Like it's hard to step out there and be that first. Shout out to Catherine. But yeah, I think that's what I would tell my younger self, is that it's okay to be the representation that you didn't have.
Monet, anything that you wish you knew when you were younger?
I would just tell myself to do it for myself, make sure that I'm happy, and not worry about if I'm making other people happy, because the people around you, no matter what you're doing, if you're enjoying it, they're gonna enjoy it as well. So I just tell my younger self, just make yourself happy first, and then the others will follow.
All right, awesome.
Can I piggyback off of that Jen said?
Yeah.
I really hate the phrase, if you can see it, you can be it. Because I think you need to be what you want to see. Don't wait for somebody else to do it first. And now I see it, now I can do it. So I always feel like the flip side of that phrase is, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And that's not the case. So I always like to try to point out, don't wait for somebody else. Be what you want to see.
I wish I could take you to my laundry room right now. I have a sign for my kids. It says, if you can imagine it, it is real. And that's kind of how we started this, right? If you dream it, you can be it, which is, I think, what we have here at this forum. But before we say goodbye, we do have a burgeoning journalist here, or we have someone who is a journalist. Monet, will you take over some of the question asking for us?
Yes, I will. Okay, so I'll start with Reagan. I too play the game. I play Call of Duty, which is very toxic. So for me, how do you handle when people are, being toxic, and they hear that you're a girl and they all like start going crazy and start talking reckless? How do you handle that? And then also, like, for your confidence, like, what do you tell yourself to keep going and to not get discouraged?
So first and foremost, in game, when somebody likes to come for me or something, I won't say that I'm toxic, but I like to kiki and caca too. So if you gonna laugh, I'm gonna get a laugh too. So they come for me and they're like, "Oh, you're just a stupid girl." And I'm gonna say, "That's why your breath stink, and I can smell it through the computer." Like, we're gonna go back and forth. We can do this all day, baby. So if they take it there, like, I think it's a much lighter way to like come back. So I'm not being like extremely toxic, but we can joke around if you want to joke around. I can take it there. But in terms of like outside of the game, if somebody says like, "Oh, you're just a dumb girl," like I said before, I just want to come harder. So I'm going to make sure that I win that game. I'm going to make sure I sit down, I focus, I sit up, and I'm going to make sure I get all the kills that I need to do. And then when I'm on the victory screen, you're going to be looking silly because now you just got beat by a girl. Now what? What does that say about you? So that's how I handle those types of situations.
Thank you, Coach Smith and Coach King. My question for you guys is, what has been the hardest part of, being a coach and getting to the position that you're at now? What's been the hardest, the biggest challenge that you guys had to face and overcome?
Go ahead, Jen.
I guess the hardest thing, obviously, is switching sports is just jumping right into the NFL as far as the offense. It's a lot, a whole lot. I still learn things now and then. And I've been in this offense for about 4 years. So never stop learning, never stop growing. But I think that was the hardest part, is that adjustment. Obviously, I had played for a while, had been around football coaching at lower levels, but to jump into the NFL with so much verbiage, so much language, and so many different things to know about the offense was definitely the most difficult part. But you just have to lock in and learn it, because obviously you have to teach it.
How about you, Catherine?
Yeah, I kind of agree. You just sort of always kind of feel like you're swimming upstream a little bit. So it gets easier over time, but I don't know that you ever feel like you've mastered it. You get better. But like Jen said, there's always just so much more to learn, so much more going on. Things are constantly changing. So, which is also, in my opinion, a really exciting part. A really exciting part about it is that you're always learning. always, more information, you got something figured out, there's some other problem that comes up that you need to find a solution for.
Do you feel, I'm now going to jump off of both of your answers. Do you feel there's a credibility difference? You both have been on staffs where there are coaches who've played the game and coaches that haven't played the game. Is there a credibility difference, do you think, for the people that you're teaching? Do you think they look at, Coach King, do you think that they look at somebody who has played in the league differently than they look at someone who hasn't played in the league?
I mean, not necessarily, just because there's so many legendary coaches who never played. Half of our staff didn't play in the NFL. They're great coaches. I think I played longer than a lot of the people that I work with. I played for 12 years. So I think for me personally, it helped, but it wasn't necessary. If you can teach, if you can instruct, if you can build those relationships, it really didn't matter.
I think that's another one of those things that, on the outside, a lot of people ask that question to me, so how can you coach? You've never played. And like Coach King said, you look around staffs and there's a lot of male coaches who also did not play. So I certainly think, like Coach said, it helps that it brings a different background having played than not played, but I don't think it's necessarily, a detriment.
I still remember a player saying to me once, he said, "You ask the best questions and you're the female." And I was like, is that a compliment or an insult? I don't know. Does anybody else have any questions for anyone? Coach King, you got one for Coach Smith?
No question. Just want to give her flowers, man. Everything that she accomplished to help, I know she's shaking her head right now, but seriously though, it's dope to be on a panel with her. It's really cool.
Do you allow yourself a moment of pride over that, Catherine? To see Coach King, to see Coach Lowe, to see
I'm proud of that. I'm proud of those women. When I got hired, I said I might be the first, but I'm certainly not going to be the only one for very long. And I'm just really glad that they all did their part to prove me right in that, because they're really killing it. They've accomplished more than I've accomplished. They've been in the league longer coaching than I was. So I'm proud of them.
All right. Well, ladies, we really, really all appreciate this. I hope we all get to talk a little bit more. And Coach Smith, send us pictures of your daughter and her pad. You do have pads for her, right? She's got a jersey.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, Coach King, I hope I see you somewhere along the way this season. And Monet, Reagan, we'll cross paths at some point, right? Okay.
Hope so.
Thank you. Thank you so, so much for your time. And to all our viewers, talk about game changers, 4 game changers in different spaces that clearly were so fabulous in sharing what their experiences have been. And now we're going to wrap the day up with 2 very, very, very special guests, Miss Valerie Condos-Field and Simone Biles.
Thank you, Aditi. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I am Valerie Condos-Field. I'm known in the gymnastics world as Miss Val. I was the head coach of the UCLA gymnastics team for 29 years, and I had the great experience of recruiting Simone Biles when she was a teenager to come to our program. As I think all of you know, she ended up going professional, did not compete for us, which is still a dagger that kind of twists every once in a while my heart, but I'm just glad that we still were able to maintain our friendship. So thank you, Simone.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
As all of you know, Simone Biles is known as the greatest of all time in the world of gymnastics. She has garnered more medals than any other gymnast in our history. And what is this as impressive is that her accomplishments off the competition floor are as great as they are on the competition floor. Just this last year, she received the inaugural Rose Bowl Institute Sports Person of the Year Award. Congratulations. And I know, and most recently, she's received the highest honor that any U.S. civilian can receive, and that is the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Oh my gosh, Simone. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
So we're going to dive in. Okay.
Yep.
I'm going to ask a question that I'm sure every human that you come in contact with asks you, because everybody that knows me and they know that I know you, they ask me, like I have a crystal ball into the Simone Biles future. And knowing you as I do, there's going to be this internal Simone Biles eye roll when I ask this question. Okay. But I love you. Okay. Simone Biles, do you have plans to compete in the 2024 Olympic Games in Paris, France?
You know, right now, I've been through a lot, so I'm working on healing mentally and physically before I decide any big decisions, because that would be a very big decision and you would have to start training almost immediately for that. So regardless, like right now, I think I'll be in France. I just don't know if that'll be on the competition floor or in the stands, but I'll be there supporting US.
Thank you. I had to ask, and I thought maybe we would be like the first to know. So
yeah,
thank you. We get it. There's
You're
a lot
welcome.
that goes into that decision. The theme for the symposium is sportsmanship, sportspersonship. When I think of Simone Biles and that word, sportsmanship, and the decision that she made to not compete after your first event, which was a decision that you made not just for yourself, but for your team as well. Can you dive into that with us and share what was going on in your mind?
Yeah. So at that point, you know, the 2020 Olympics had been postponed to 2021, and that was just hard enough decision in itself. And for all of the athletes to keep training a year and to kind of peak at the right time again. But once we got over there, things were pretty seamless as you could during a COVID year, I guess, with the testing and all of that stuff. And there was no crowd. So it wasn't like a normal Olympic Games, but, at that point, my mind and my body started getting really out of sync. And that's what you guys saw me on the vault. I did a 1.5 instead of a 2.5. And that's when I made that decision, not only for myself, but for the team as well, because I knew that they were still going to be in medal contention with or without me. So I needed to be smart about that decision because they had trained just as hard as me. So, you know, I decided to take that step back, go get the proper help that I needed, which was kind of like mental therapy and all of that stuff. And it taught me a lot about myself. And that's probably the strongest, most vulnerable I've ever been, but it got me the proper help that I need.
I just got chills. When you said it's the most vulnerable you've ever been, I can't imagine what it feels like to be that vulnerable on the world stage.
Yeah. It wasn't easy, but I knew it was the right decision and I had to put me first. And for so many years, you know, you compartmentalize, you do different things to either try to not think about the pain or things that you've gone through, but sometimes your body speaks up for you. And I'm just happy that that has that fire effect and it still works for me. So I was very, very thankful.
And I know your teammates well that were on that team with you, and they all share this feeling that they know that you did this for them.
Yes.
So, because had you continued to compete, it literally just would have been a Simone Biles show, not knowing what would have happened.
Exactly.
And you took care of yourself at the same time, taking care of these your friends that you've grown up with. So that's like sports person of the year is like, yes, Simone Biles. That comes to mind very clearly. In this day and age, we're talking about mental health and wellness a lot. And anyone that knows you knows what a huge support your parents and your coaches have played throughout your entire career. Can you share with us what that was like through your career? Did they put pressure on you? What did that feeling of support feel like?
For me, it felt like I was always on top of the world, and not just with accomplishments, but with the support that my team gave me, which involved my parents, my coaches, my doctors, my sports psychologist, all of that, because it does take a village. So I was very grateful to have a support system like that. But my parents never pushed me to do gymnastics, to make any decisions. Everything was always up to me. And so whenever I would make these decisions, their thing was like, write down a pros and a cons list so that you see what that looks like, and then you can decide that, because at the end of the day, this is your life, this is your career. We've never been in these footsteps, so we're going to let you make that decision. And that's what they did throughout my whole entire career and still do to this day.
Oh my gosh, that just makes my heart smile so big. Because, we're dealing with a time now where parents feel that they are the ones that have to be pushing their child to be great.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I first met you and was recruiting you and asking you, what did your parents say before you competed? And you said, my mom says, just go out and enjoy it, honey.
Yep.
I mean, that's parents, if you're listening, this is huge.
Yes.
But at the same time, I mean, you are competitive. We all are born with competitiveness. Right. It's important to set goals.
Mm-hmm, of course.
So how would you define success with you and your parents, especially? And, I think people on the outside, I think we look at someone like you and we think that you've just always won at everything you've ever done. So think of a goal that you set that you didn't achieve, and how did that feel?
Yeah. So I think it was 2011, before I made my first national team, that meet it was all right, but I didn't do my best and I didn't end up making national team. So that was kind of really hard for me. But at the end of the day, I went back into the gym. I worked even harder. My parents are like, are you sure this is what you want to do? Because this could potentially happen again. And my parents always told me that this is your dream, not ours. So whatever you do, we'll support you. And they've done that. But there have been many times where I've gone out there and not done my best. But for me, success doesn't always look like standing on the top of the podium. I've had the greatest pleasure of representing the US, and we usually do end up on podium, but there have been times where I have won and I'm still not proud of the performance that I've given. So I think of success as like giving 110%, having fun, supporting the team, being a good teammate. And that's what it looks like for me.
Preach, Simone Biles. It's great. Stepping outside of the world of athletics, I know that there are so many organizations that are super, super important to you. You give back a lot. A lot. And I know, there are times when we've spoken that you've just been so wiped because you're pulled in all the directions, and the majority of the time you say yes. Is there an organization that is near and dear to your heart?
For me, right now, I work very closely with Friends of the Children. So what that organization does is it works with foster kids or people in kind of like low income housing, and they pair you with a peer, which is usually an adult. So they take those footsteps and they give you advice, come to your events, and they're kind of like that father or mother figure that you have for 12 plus years until you're 18 years old and you go off to college. And most of those kids still have close relationships with those people, but it starts at a very young age. And it's really important to show that commitment and to have somebody that believes in you, because in foster care, I've been there. It's pretty tough. So that's why I like to work with Friends of the Children. And we're trying to actually bring one of those here to Houston. They're in different places in the US, but we don't have one in Houston. So we've been trying to work really, really hard in getting one of those in Houston, my hometown. So maybe I could go visit.
Okay, Houston, are you listening? Let's do this. We got Simone Biles in your backyard. She's going to be your ambassador.
That would just be amazing, because I know how much it means to those kids and how excited those peers and those adults are as well.
I can't imagine what it would feel like for one of those foster children to meet you and you to be able to look them in the eye and say, I do know what you're feeling.
Yeah, I've gotten to meet a lot over the years of working with different organizations. And it's just so exciting. And I know exactly how they feel. So I can be in their footsteps and then they get to follow in my footsteps. But it's really exciting to at least relate and go talk to these kids. And if anything, just give them hope.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Talk about giving back. You're not just giving back your time, you're giving back of your story, and you're giving back this understanding of what you just said, of hope.
Yep, exactly.
Which can be which can make the difference in someone's life.
Yes. And it usually does, because once you have somebody that believes in you, you feel like you can achieve anything. You're on top of the world. And that's just what these kids need. So hopefully we can bring that to Houston.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. Well, we're all there. We're going to come and support you when that happens. You just let us know.
Thank
Okay?
you. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
You're welcome. This time last year, you were wowing stages, live entertainment with the Simone Biles Gold Over America Tour. Okay, we just have to take a pause because I love that title. Get it? The acronym GOAT,
Yes.
Gold Over America Tour.
Yes.
And I grew up dancing. I know how hard it is to bring it every single night.
Yeah.
The most shocking, I don't want this to sound like a negative, but I was shocked every time I showed up and watched you perform. Your level of enthusiasm to be out there to give back to people who had spent their hard-earned dollars to come see this tour. Your enthusiasm never dipped. That is really hard when you're performing night after night after night after night after night. How did that feel for you?
God, it felt so exciting. And again, you have those kids in the crowd that can relate to you. You've been in their footsteps. So for us, we were telling a story, and it was just so exciting to see new faces and new places. And that's what we had to remember every single night of performing on that show is we're performing the same show, but these kids, this is the first time seeing it. So of course we want to bring that wow factor in. That's what I tried to do. And they were just so excited to be there. And we were so excited to be there. So of course I was just so excited, and I couldn't even believe that the tour happened. Like it was a lifelong dream, and then it comes true. And so every night I was just so grateful and so blessed, and it wowed me to see how many people came out to see the show.
And for those of you that didn't see it, there was a whole section in there about anxiety.
Yes.
And it took us deep into your layers of who Simone Biles is. It brought tears every single time I saw it in rehearsal and performance. It's like kind of method acting out there. You went back to that place
right
every night. And then you came out of it with joy at the end. Was that hard? Did that take a toll on you? And was it something like, I never asked you this. Was it when we were putting the show together, did you have to pause and think about whether you wanted this part in the show? Because it was deep.
Yeah, it was deep. And I definitely wanted it in the show because I know how many kids can relate to that certain act, and to know that, hey, it's okay to not be okay. We can all have down moments, but then it's what you do after that, and it's how you come out of that. So to be so vulnerable in that moment and kind of go back to my younger years and my childhood, and even the past couple months before that, it was actually nice because it gave me a sense of almost like 3 minutes of therapy, and then to come back out. So I felt relieved, I felt refreshed, and it's just like, okay, that was my moment to take this in, and then to come out of it and just be excited and be back with that crowd and having fun.
That is beautiful. I haven't heard you explain all that. That is really beautiful. Since then, you've continued to have a very, very, very full life. And I've not had a chance to congratulate you in person. Congratulations on your engagement. Look at the smile, people. Look at the smile. Your fiance has an incredible story. Tell us a little bit about him.
Yes. So he we're going to go back to college. He went to a D2 school, Missouri Western, and he was kind of the star at that school. And he is very, very talented, but he chose that school because of scholarships and all of that stuff. And he just knew that he needed to go to a smaller college so that he could be reeled in, because he is he's very dedicated to school as well. So he didn't want to go to a big school and kind of lose track of school, because he's very proud of his accomplishments, not just in athletics, but in school as well, and his degree. So that was super exciting. After that, he decided to kind of enter, it's not necessarily the draft because he went undrafted, but he had
as a football player, right?
Yes, as a football player. He plays football. And so he had multiple NFL teams come and see him. And at the end of the day, he chose to go to Arizona to play with the Cardinals, and he was there for a season. And he unfortunately tore his ACL, and that was his second ACL of his career. So he's torn both of them. And so right after that, they cut him, and he was cut for 3 weeks. So that was pretty hard on him. And he said he would go across the field at the stadium and still practice because he knew that he still wanted to be in the NFL. And that's when the Houston Texans picked him up. And every year since then, this is his 5th year. He's gotten cut 4 times and then placed on the practice squad. And this year, from all of his hard work, he made the 53-man roster. So he's kind of an untold story because most people don't play that long or make it after so long. But I'm just really proud of him and the work that he's put in. And he's always told me for all these years, like, babe, I'm going to make the 53-man roster. And I believed in him because I've seen his potential. All he needed was a chance. And he's finally getting that. And now he's leading tackles for the second week of NFL.
I did not know that stat. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
He went from undrafted, unsigned, everything.
Yep.
2 ACL injuries, and he is leading the NFL in tackles.
Yes.
Jonathan, you go, Jonathan.
Yes.
Right.
So it's
We're gonna
very
do one
exciting.
for Jonathan the next time.
Yes.
Who's the most competitive between the two of you?
Him. I am competitive in different ways, like in dumb things. Like if we're playing games outside or video games, that stuff is just so fun to me, but he takes that to heart. I'm more of like, I know I'm right. So here's a stat and I have this in my head. I told him last night, like, I feel like I have Google in my brain and I just make stuff up, but I just know I'm right. Like that's whenever I get competitive, but he's so competitive in games and all of that stuff. So you just have to let him have it. He hates losing.
Okay, so I saw on social a while ago that you two did a rope climb challenge. Whose idea was that?
That was actually his idea because he's seen us do the rope and he was like, that's easy. I can do that. And I'm like, I don't think you understand the strength it takes to do gymnastics because it's not just football. It's not running. It's not catching a ball. Like every muscle in your body is engaged when you do gymnastics. So I said, fine, let's do a rope challenge since you think it's so easy. And it was harder than he thought. And he lost.
And he lost. And you won.
He lost. Yes.
And do you rub it in?
He likes saying that video, but every time he's like, I can do it again. Let's do it again. We can do it. And I'm like, I don't think it's going to happen. Like, I love you, but I just don't think it's going to happen. And the crazy thing is I've been to his NFL practice and I've worked out with the guys and I did it all. And so I brought him to the gym to do one of our workouts. He didn't tell me till like a week later, but the next day he could barely move.
Okay. All right.
So,
well, this has got to be a fun household, and it's going to be fun when you guys start having kids. That
God,
coming out. Exactly.
Yes.
Do we have a date?
We do have a wedding date. It is next year. It is sometime in May. We are doing a destination wedding. I have my dress.
Can we see it?
Oh yeah. Let me just show you guys. You guys will see it on the day that everybody else sees it. But I'm very excited about it. I think they're absolutely stunning. And I think we picked the perfect location. And it's kind of like, it gives a little bit of him and I. So it's kind of a bit of us because we like traveling. So.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah. Okay. So getting back around to sportsmanship. How old are you now?
I'm 25.
25. Congratulations. Yeah. You're a quarter of a century. Was that weird? Turning a quarter of a century.
It is. It's a lot to think about and to think about how much I've accomplished and what I still have left to do and what's ahead of me. It's a little nerve-wracking.
So I always think it's interesting to hear athletes talk about what they would say to their younger self. And if you could write a letter or go back, because so much of what we tell ourselves is not positive. And I think it's so much easier to be complimentary and compassionate and caring and loving to someone else more than it is.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah. So if you could go back to your younger self and think of a time that you were just really beating yourself up mentally, what would you say?
Well, not only mentally, but I think throughout my career, whenever I was younger, starting out, I was scared to be great. So I used to self-sabotage. So I would say, just let it happen, just be great. Like, it's okay. And I would also say to not be so stubborn, because I was a very stubborn child.
Women, is that past tense? You were stubborn?
I feel like I've matured a little bit, so I just know when to be stubborn.
Okay.
You know?
Okay. I think that's a fascinating statement that you said you were afraid to be great.
Yeah.
Why?
Because I was afraid of the tension that it would bring. And I was okay with being in my little shell in Spring, Texas at band and gymnastics. I didn't go to like a big brand name gym or anything like that. And I was comfortable in that bubble. And of course, whenever we went to nationals and stuff like that, people would be like, oh my God, you're so good. But I didn't really want it to go anywhere else because I wasn't necessarily ready for that. And I never pictured myself as a celebrity or a role model or anything like that. So I was just comfortable.
Did you apply more pressure to yourself? Because I know it didn't come from your parents, and I don't think it came from your coaches. I think that you've been very blessed to have.
And I think I have. And I think the most pressure that is applied to me, besides social media and things that you can't control, would have been myself. But just so that I could one day walk away from the sport and say I gave it my all.
So did you put more pressure on yourself the bigger the stage?
Not necessarily. I think in the beginning, starting out in my career and going on that global stage and doing world championships, I think I put a lot of pressure on myself so that I could do well and keep that momentum going. But there came to a certain point where I was like, just do you, no expectations, because I felt like I did better whenever I went into a competition with little expectation and tried not to listen to social media and news and stuff like that.
Okay. What score? I was going to say grade, but since we're talking gymnastics, what score, 10 being fabulous.
Yeah.
What score would you give yourself as to how you have been able to manage social media?
Honestly, I feel like a 5+, because there are times where I get in my head about it and I really, really care. And then there are times I could care less. So I think having a 2 elite athlete household has really helped me, because Jonathan he just posts. He doesn't care about social media. It doesn't matter to him. He just likes to post his football posts and he's good. And he's always saying, why are you listening to that? Turn that off. So in the Olympics, he actually really helped me. He forced me to delete my social media, put them on the very back page so I wouldn't see any of that nonsense. And he's like, just do you, who cares what they have to say? So I feel like I give myself a solid 5 or a 6.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I think it's really important for all of us to know that if you have any type of celebrity, even if it's just like in your home little town, you're going to get people that say hurtful things.
Of course.
Everybody does. And the bigger you get, the more they come out.
Yep.
But what has helped me a lot, what I share with, the student athletes that I'm still close with, is that I think about the people whom I really respect, and you're one of those people that I can't imagine. I've never seen you or any person whom I have a tremendous amount of respect for post anything hurtful on social media.
Right.
So the hurt is coming from hurt people.
Of course.
And that's kind of the way that I'm allow myself to get past it and not let it just dig into me and make me my stomach,
Yeah, which makes sense. And I think the older you get, sometimes the easier it gets to ignore that noise, because at the end of the day, your closest circle knows who you are, knows your character, and that's all that matters.
And you know what? It's true that you choose your friends.
Yep.
And most importantly, you choose your spouse, you choose your mate, you choose your partner. And how important it is, any young people out there, I want you to be listening to this, how important it is that Simone has chosen someone that doesn't feed into the negative, that doesn't encourage you to stay on social, that says, come on, babe, we got this.
Right.
Don't listen to them. It's
Yep.
what a gift that you have a partner in that makes you better.
Of course. Yes.
you make
Yes.
it
Always. Always.
Always.
Yes.
Well, is there anything else that you would like to share with us?
No, I'm good. Thank you guys so
Thank
much for
you.
this conversation. I really appreciate it. It was so good to see you, and you know how much respect and how much I love you. So thank you.
Thank you, Simone. I have one more question from all of us viewers.
Okay.
What color scheme would you like us to wear for your wedding?
Oh, the wedding would be neutrals.
Okay, hear that, people? Go out and buy your neutrals, okay?
Yep.
All right.
Your neutrals.
Invitation is in the mail. I'm
Yes.
just kidding. All right. Congratulations on everything. You are literally beaming. I could not be more happy for you. You have earned all of it. Enjoy it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mwah. Love you.
Love you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I hope you have a lovely day. And Aditi, I'm passing it back to you.
Thank you again, Miss Val and Simone. You are both such inspirations. And because we love surprises, and we think you will too, we have a last minute special guest joining us today. This is one to maybe go grab your parents for if you can, because this is a special treat for all the parents out there too. We have Simone's mom, Nellie, joining us with none other than Miss Val once again.
I am extremely excited to bring to the Women's Empowerment Symposium a little something extra with an interview today and a discussion with Nellie Biles, the mom of Simone Biles. So Nellie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So my first question to you is, what was your and Ron, your husband's philosophy with your children, all of them, in parenting them through academics and sports?
There are two answers to that, because I did practice transactional parenting. And I did that with, I want to say, all 4 children, because whenever the school would start, every school year, as a matter of fact, we would talk about the goals, what they were, and the goals were achieving good grades. So I would take out a tablet and I would write, if you get an A, you get X amount of dollars. So I paid for, and so it was a reward system. I paid for A's and B's and nothing else. So you will not get anything for a C, whatever, it doesn't matter. So A's and B's were what I paid for. And I had them sign this contract. So it was a contract base and it was there, so they knew. So I did that with grades. And I also saw myself starting doing that with gymnastics. So the gymnastics was not, well, it was still a win base, because you need to go out there and do your best. That's all I'm asking for. I'm not asking for a gold or a silver or a bronze. It's your best. And if your best puts you on the podium, then that's $100. It doesn't matter where you get on the podium. So it doesn't matter if it's a gold, a silver, or a bronze. And I did that because I felt like I needed to challenge Simone. And it worked. And then it got to the point where I was running out of money pretty much, because I'm paying this girl, she's on the podium all the time. So then we changed that system. And so after she won that was the end of the rewards. I'm like, we're not doing this anymore, because it's sending a bad message that if you win something, then you get something, in turn. So to me, I was losing what I wanted her to gain from her sport. And it didn't, and it should never be about a reward. It should be about going out there, embracing the sport and having fun. That was my number one thing, was to have fun. And so I stopped the reward system, and I think I stopped at when she was about 15, 16, that reward system stopped. And then from there on, it was just encouraging her to go out there and have fun and to do the best that she can. And then I used those words, and then after that, then I stopped because she didn't want to listen to that. It gets to the point where she is stressed before the competition. So even using those words, do the best that you can, didn't work because I saw what her reaction was. So I tweaked it a little bit and I said, just be the best, Simone. And she knew what that meant. So I think just using her name maybe made a difference.
Wow.
And
so
that, mhm.
this is, I mean, I didn't realize I'm connecting all these dots as we're talking about transactional versus transformational. You as a parent were transformational. You took the time to understand what was going to motivate your child and that it changed as she got older.
Yes, yes. I believe when they're, well, I'm not going to say that this is the best way of doing things, but I believe that that children respond when they get a gift or if they get a reward. And I think that we start this training from the time they're babies. And we do that with our pets. We do that with our children. But then after a certain time, I think they need to understand that these are life's lessons. And it's not about a reward anymore. It's about an outcome that you should feel good about. It should be something that you should be proud of. And as a family, that's what we're going to celebrate. And that's what we did.
I can't begin to imagine the noise that Simone has had, especially these last, since probably a year before 2016, 17, 18, in this last Olympics. But you don't have to be a Simone Biles to have that noise as a child now. And everybody has noise in their lives, but we're talking about children and our youth. How did you protect your children from the noise? And by the noise, I'm not just talking about social media or the reports coming out, of whether she did great or not. She's the greatest in the world or she didn't. I'm talking about noise also, such as what you just explained, that you're really doing a disservice to yourself because you're going on vacation. Like, that's noise. That's contrary to what she's feeling and what her family is feeling and her parents have instructed her with. How have you helped her deal with that noise that as her celebrity grew, it just became a cacophony of very loud, negative noise?
That was difficult. I believe that's the most difficult thing that I dealt with. When Simone was younger, I think I had more control, because when I knew they were paying too much attention to what's going on out there, or if she did something wrong, because my favorite punishment was taking the cell phone away for a week. That worked to a certain time, and after that, then it didn't work anymore. Simone would even tell me, "Mom, don't forget, I paid for that phone." So it's not like I paid for the phone, she paid for the phone. So, but I encourage Simone or any of the children to talk to me, but especially Simone to talk to me. So when there were things that were bothering her, or she would read something that was definitely not right because someone got the story wrong, or the criticism she would be getting, and the badgering, and it's just crazy. And then to me, it gets worse for an international competition, because of course there's stuff you cannot read unless you go and you do the interpretation. But people are very, very cruel. They're very cruel. They don't know the person they're criticizing, and they say hurtful things. And this person is still a teenager that's vulnerable to what is being said. So I would have to sit with my daughter very often and say, you need to stop reading what's out there. And if you continue, then you will respond like this. And then in turn, it affects the family, because it's not only Simone that is being affected, it's the rest of us, because the noise affects her behavior that affects the rest of the family. So it's just a domino effect that we have in the house, and I have to try and see where I could stop that. And then, so just getting her to understand what she did was her best, and it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. I said, you know, before you went out there, what I told you, to be the best Simone. And if that's what the best Simone is, that's all that matters to me. Because to me, if an athlete goes out there and gives it 100%, that's all that matters. So her 100%, obviously, that one day did not measure up to someone else's 100%. That was scored better. Nothing wrong with that, because you cannot win or expect to win every single time that you compete. That's not what you're there for. Yes, winning is important, but giving the sport 100% of what you could give, to me, is more rewarding. And if you look at it that way, instead of saying, and you end up getting a gold medal, say you get a gold medal for that, that's great. But if you get a bronze medal for that, that should still be great, because that's the best that you could have given, and it couldn't have been any better. And so I think it's a fine line to understand that. And I try real hard for Simone to understand, whatever your best equates, that's it. We're happy with it.
How did you, as a parent, silence the noise that was probably bigger? It was as big as any athlete has ever experienced these last Olympic Games with Simone, when she decided not to compete after vault. How did you, I can imagine now having had our discussion, what you would have said to Simone, but as a parent, how did you handle all that and work through it?
You have to listen, and you have to listen, and you have to listen.
To whom?
To Simone. It's not, I know what the noise is. She knows we all know what the noise, what's the noise, and how everyone is putting her or categorizing her as a failure, that she failed her country, that she failed herself, and it goes on and on and on. And I know deep down that my daughter is not a failure. I know deep down that my daughter was taking care of herself. I know deep down that I have told my daughter from the time she was little, if you want to step away, I don't use the quit word, but that's what it is, then you need to give me a reason why. And if it's a good reason, that's it, we're done. Because it's not worth the stress. It's not worth you you turning around and being angry at us, meaning the family, because it's displaced anger we're now experiencing from you. And that's not fair to us. So from the time she was younger, and I said, as long as you have a good reason, then I'll listen to it. Just don't tell me it was a bad day you were having at the gym. That's not a good reason. But if you have a good reason, I will listen to it. My daughter called me in the back after I saw what was going on, and I'm like, something is wrong, because not being there and seeing this on television, it was bad. So
So
when
after vault, or right after she vaulted?
yes. And then she called me and she said, Mom, I cannot do it. I said, don't do it. And she said, I'm sorry. I said, don't be sorry. Do not be sorry. The last thing I need is for you to face plant and hurt yourself, because I will never, ever forgive myself for allowing you to continue. I said, don't do it. And that was it. And I told her how much I love her, and that was it. End of conversation. I never once asked, well, do you think you should try it another way? Never once. Because it's giving that person that authority and autonomy and everything else that we keep saying we're going to give, and we're going to treat the person as an adult. This is an adult that I'm dealing with. And if she tells me I cannot do it, those are powerful words. Those are powerful words. She never said, Mom, what do you think? She never did. The conversation was never about what I thought or asking me for advice. It was clear that she couldn't do it. And that was what she said. And I said, don't do it. That's it. Don't do it. And I was so proud that she could have made that decision. I mean, I could cry. That moment, I'll never forget that moment. I'll never forget when my daughter made the right decision ever. So when that noise started, it was hard. It was hard to sit back and listen. It was hard for me not to get on Twitter or Facebook or any of those social media and tell them what I felt as a mother. But I decided I'm not gonna stoop that low, because they don't know my daughter, they don't know us. They're just making whatever judgment based on their beliefs. So I didn't. I swear, I did a couple times, and I'd never sent. I never hit send, because that would have been the wrong thing to do. I never did.
Yeah. I want to just go back to how you first started responding to this question. And you said, I listened, and I listened,
Right.
and I listened.
All right.
And
that's what you have to do. And my daughter is hurting, and she needs someone to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that she could call me and said, Mom, did you read this? And I said, yes. Well, this is someone from Texas. I said, yes. Mom, did you read this? This is someone from a broadcaster. Yes, I know. And I've read it. I've read them all. And I said, we are going to do one thing. We're going to ignore these. We're going to read them, or we're going to choose not to read them. I said, but we're not going to respond. For one, we're not going to respond to them. And we're going to remember why you did this. And the reason why you did this was for your safety. We're going to keep that in mind. And that's and regardless of what anyone say or criticize, we're going to try and ignore it. I said, but if you ever want to talk to me, it doesn't matter what time of the day or night, because we spoke different times just because of the time differences. And she would call and she would just want to talk. And she would just want to talk. And, and I think that's great, because not all children want to talk about what's bothering them.
But I think one reason why children don't, or humans don't, because they don't feel that they're being heard. And to truly listen to someone with every sense, not just your ears, but your eyes and their feeling and your emotion, is one of the greatest gifts that we can give another human being. And it doesn't have to be a Simone Biles at 22 years old. It can be a 10-year-old. And even if you don't like with my grandchildren, when I ask them why they did something they shouldn't have done, and they're giving me their reason, I don't agree with it at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm consciously, intentionally practicing the skill of being still and quiet and listening, because it's the greatest gift I can give them in that moment. That's where the trust comes.
Correct.
That's why your daughter trusted you when she called you in her deepest, darkest hour of her life, trusted you to not make her feel worse and to listen.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
If there could be a whole book on parenting and coaching and mentorship and leadership just on that one word, the gift of listening. And as you're talking, to paraphrase this, you and her team, particularly you and Ron and her team, her agent, who's amazing, her fiance, who are her doctors, everybody between now and then will coach her up to give her the tools to be able to handle anything, to be impervious to any noise that comes forward. And I think that's again, one of the greatest things a parent can do is to equip their children with how to handle any situation without losing their sense of who they are. So it doesn't matter whether someone on social media is saying you're the greatest of all time, the GOAT, or if someone on social media is saying you quit on our country, you respond the same, because you are yourself. You are Simone Biles. You don't let the negativity bring out a side of you that you don't want to come out. That's not you. And those tools are, oh my gosh, like, talk about getting a PhD in emotional self-preservation. That would be amazing. Looking back at the whole span of raising Simone, helping to parent her and her sister and your two boys and two other children for a short period of time. In hindsight, would you do anything differently? And I'm not saying regrets, because you're a wise enough woman to know that you're not perfect and that we all make mistakes. So I'm not talking about regret. I'm just saying, you know what, going back, I'd do this a little differently.
No. I could honestly say the way I raised Simone and the rest of the children, I don't think that there's anything that I would do differently. Well, maybe force her to cook, but no, I really would not, because I'm a strong person, but when the situation comes to where I see that someone is having difficulty, any one of my children, believe me, I am there and I will listen. And then we will then together come up with a solution, hopefully. And I've done that, and I still do that to help not me troubleshoot it, but us troubleshoot it. Because it's not about me. And I always have to, and I tell my coaches that too. The day it becomes about you, then you're doing something wrong. It should never be about you, the coach. it should always be about the children. So when you're talking to me and you're telling me, I want to do this, I'm not going to do this, yada, yada, I will be the first to say, you're using the wrong word. You're using this I. It's not I.
No. I'm looking at my bookshelf because one of my favorite books is called The Conscious Parent, and it is by a psychologist, Dr. Shafali, and she goes into great detail about how often when you do give the pat on the back, or you do give, that's what I thought was so interesting when you were talking about your reward system was for goals, and it was very clear, but it wasn't about you. And she goes into great detail about, quite often when parents say, good job, you got an A, it's about them. It's about the parent giving themselves the pat on the back. And I think looking back at our conversation right now, you have been very firm, but compassionate. You have challenged your children to be the very best they can be without demeaning them. You have always supported them with unconditional love. If Simone came home with something that wasn't an A or a B, she just didn't get the money. It didn't mean that you didn't love her.
Correct.
She wasn't punished. There was no punishment. There was simply the reward. And I think that's a huge, huge point to bring up here with parenting and coaching, is that it is our job to challenge. As a coach, it's our job to challenge you and to reward. You know what? If you get your beam assignment done in less than a half an hour, okay, we're going to cut conditioning in half, okay? Versus a punishment. Mm-hmm. And when you punish, it becomes personal. And that's when I feel coaches and parents cross a line, is when it becomes personal.
Correct.
You've had a lot of moments in your life. You've had a lot of amazing moments. You've had a lot of tragedy and sadness. In closing, would you share your most proud moment as a mom?
It's still the number one is the day that Simone won the all around, and this was in Antwerp. That's her first world competition. I'll never forget that. I mean, we were just rookies. I have no idea what was going on. Still don't know a Yuchenko from whatever. See, I use another word. But this was her senior, this was her first year competing as a senior, and she's doing well. Of course, she had some up and downs. Then she did well, and then lo and behold, I said, well, where do we go from here? Because she had won nationals. She won the all-around in nationals. And then her coach said, I think the next competition is worlds. Me, green, not knowing what that is. And then she goes, I said, well, okay, fine. And we'll travel and we'll be at that competition. But just talking to everyone, talking to Simone, we knew that Kyla was going to win that competition because Kyla was the senior, and Simone was the rookie. There were all these girls that were former Olympians, and so there was absolutely no expectation from us. I still say the same thing. You make sure that you go out there and you be the best Simone. I said, people are watching, so they need to see what you could do. Just be the best Simone. Okay, Mom. That was all. That was the expectation. And that best Simone resulted in her winning her first Worlds. I will never forget how that felt. I mean, yes, she's done well at the Olympics, but that first time that Simone won a world competition was the proudest moment I had.
Well, I have to give you a big atta girl and a pat on the back, because you didn't make that competition bigger than the others. You didn't say, you kept with your mantra and your philosophy in parenting your child. Just be the best you can be. Don't try to be anybody else. Don't compare to yourself to anybody else. And don't expect to be more than you have prepared for simply because it's a bigger stage. And that's hard. That's really hard for athletes. They put more pressure on themselves the bigger the stage gets. It's hard for us coaches. I lived it for 37 years. It's hard for parents not to change the expectations. Yeah. And the fact that you kept it, just be the best that you can be today.
Correct.
That allowed your daughter the freedom to release her brilliance on that day versus 100%, I believe, had you made the competition bigger simply because it was a world stage versus a national stage, it would have, even if it put that much more pressure on her,
correct,
she would not have had the same success.
Correct.
Without question.
Correct.
So you get an atta girl and a big old pat on the back, Nellie.
Well, thank you. Thank you. But I that's how I've parent from day one. And I think it worked well for me.
I think that's a lovely sentiment to finish our conversation on, especially living in a world of comparison. Our youth, I feel so badly for them. On social media, it's just one comparison after another. And for you to be able to all these years keep reinforcing that. Yeah, you've been blessed with tremendous abilities mentally and physically. So let's set goals and achieve those goals and just be the best that you can be. And the brilliance of that is Simone's abilities are here. Like everybody else's in the world are here. Simone's are here. Don't compare yourself to them, honey. Compare yourself to yourself. So I can't thank you enough for this conversation. Thank you for being the example and modeling behavior for other parents, to be able to see you can have success at the highest level without demeaning, badgering, and any type of negativity coming from you. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ms. Bell. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you all for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. As I said before we started this conversation, I could talk with Nellie about 10 hours straight about all of this. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us today on day one of the 4th Annual Women's Empowerment Symposium. After talking with all of these amazing women, I am certainly feeling energized and hope that you can say the same. We've learned from some amazing female leaders and athletes how they've taken sports values from the court or the field, or even virtually, into everyday life, and how many of them have broken barriers in what's occasionally a man's world. We hope that we are leaving you inspired and empowered by their experiences. Be sure to join us again tomorrow as we're just getting started. Thank you again so much. Have a great evening, and be sure to stay in touch with the Rose Bowl Institute at rosebowlinstitute.org.